Hi guys, so it's a few days since I've chatted to you, but I wanted to give you a bit of an update on where I'm at with my own journey and give you a couple of ideas that maybe help you with your own going forwards. What I'm going to do over the next few videos is talk to you a little bit about coachability. And the reason for that is that coachability is absolutely critical to progression and accomplishment. It doesn't matter whether you're self-coached or whether you're coached by somebody else. Now, that might seem a little bit strange, but if you're self-coached, you're still coached. You're still coached by you. So therefore, you still have to be coachable for you to be able to make effective progression and feel and become accomplished. So coachability is an incredibly important part of being an accomplished person, an athlete. This was something that I thought about many years ago. One of the best coaches I ever had in my life, at a time, was a hockey coach. Had told me that as a player, my biggest responsibility was to be coachable. And I never forgot that. And it was applicable to not just my athletic career, my sporting career as a hockey player, but it's been applicable to my time as a triathlete and also my time in the corporate world. I always prided myself on being coachable. One of the things that's been difficult with our guys is to try to help them to understand more objectively what coachability means. I've always kind of felt I knew what it meant in my head, but trying to explain to somebody else wasn't that easy. So we've tried to break it down for our athletes to help them understand. And we often go back to this if an athlete's finding they're not progressing the way they want or they're not feeling accomplished. We go back to the coachability behaviours and to try to identify whether or not they're going well or not for them. So there are 4 core behaviours that we've identified and 2 critical ones. We're going to talk about the 4 core behaviours first of all. I'm going to talk about 2 today, 2 on another video, and then we'll talk about 2 critical behaviours further on down the line. So the first 2 core behaviours, well, the first one we've already covered in a previous video, so I'm not going to cover it again today, but that's the Ipsative goal setting process that we use. Now, obviously, a lot of you may use SMART. I've explained why I feel that SMART is flawed and that the Ipsative process we use is more appropriate for people, especially on a journey of personal accomplishment. But Ipsative is the first core behaviour that we make sure our athletes have got on point. If your Ipsative goal setting process, the Ipsative behaviour is not there, the Ipsative goal setting behaviour is not there and not on point, it's going to be really difficult for you to feel accomplished and to see progression, because your goals have to be on point. If your goals aren't right, you're always going to struggle. The next one that we use with our guys is the commitment continuum. Now, this is a model that's been around for a long time. We actually use a slightly different version of this. We use a dual version of this where we have a reactive and proactive commitment continuum, and they overlap, and maybe I'll cover that a different day, because sometimes people think that they're really committed and they sit high on the commitment continuum and they don't understand why they're not progressing compared to others. And often it's because they have a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach to their level of commitment. But we'll cover that another day. What we're going to talk about today is basically the simplified version of the commitment continuum, the one that you guys already may be familiar with. So first of all, at the very bottom of the commitment continuum, we've got resistant. So resistant is basically that you're not bought in. You're not interested in what it is that you should be committed to. So you're not bought in at all, and that's really difficult. It's almost impossible to coach somebody who's resistant, obviously. And in fact, if you're resistant, your goals probably are nowhere near where they should be because you clearly don't even want to do them. Then we've got reluctant. So reluctant is a little bit better than resistant in that you're not completely not bought into the process, but you're like sort of wait and see place. So you want evidence that what you're being asked to do, what you need to do, are going to work before you indulge in those. And these are quite important at the moment actually, because we've got some goals imposed on us at the moment, i.e. lockdown, a lot of us sit at very different levels in the commitment continuum, some people are resistant. Some people are just like not bought in. They don't care. Doesn't matter what they've been asked to do. They're not going to do it. Some people are reluctant. They're sort of like, well, yeah, I'll do it, but you need to show me that it's actually going to work, and they're waiting to see evidence that it's of value. So these 2 things are quite important, and you can relate to them quite easily at the moment. Then we've got existent. Just get a better pen. Excuse me. So then we've got existent, and existent is sort of ticking the boxes and sort of going through the motions. It's somebody who's it's sort of doing stuff, but not really doing it so they can say they've done it. They're the person that's predominantly staying in at the moment, but still going out to get the paper, when they don't need to. Still going out to buy some sweets or some fags or whatever it might be, when perhaps they don't need to be doing that. So, they're ticking boxes, yeah? They're going through the motions, but they're not really fully committed to the process. Then we've got compliant. So this is somebody that does do what they're told to do. So from a coaching perspective, this is somebody who does the sessions you might set them. In school, it's somebody who does their homework, somebody who turns up to lessons, etc., etc. They're not just going through the motions. So they are doing the stuff, yeah? Then we've got committed. So people who are committed. So those are the people that are, not just doing what they're told, but they'll go that extra mile. They'll do a little bit more than somebody who's compliant. They're prepared to do a little bit more than the minimum. And then we've got people who are compelled. Let's put this one in green, shall we? Perhaps committed should have been in green as well. But people who are compelled to do whatever they need to do to achieve their goals. So they will do whatever it takes. Now for us, compelled is always something that's still value adding. So that's not somebody who's destructive to those around them. So being compelled is not just about being compelled in one thing, it's about being compelled in the right level of balance. So if you're an amateur triathlete, for example, being compelled is not sacrificing and disrespecting your family and your work, for example, to achieve your goals. It's about balance for us. Because what's often forgotten in the commitment continuum is what exists above compelled, and that is obsessed. And there actually is a category, yes, of people that fall above compelled, really, and that's obsession. And this is really important for coaches to identify and athletes to identify when do they fall into this category. And in fact, our friends at Triforce talked a bit about their recommendations for training this week. There is a lot of people that are starting maybe to drift towards obsessed or being led towards obsessed because they are confused about what their goals are at the moment. Now, with a lot of high-performing athletes, obsession is quite common. And certainly it's the trap I tend to fall into. I'm much more like to be obsessed than I am to be existent or reluctant. And I actually use my wife, Lauren, who's holding the camera at the moment, to keep an eye on me and try to recognise any behaviours that might be obsessed or obsessive. And bring me back into a compelled state. And at the moment, this is something I'm focusing on really, really hard, because it'd be very easy for me when I'm feeling anxious, feeling tense, out of my routine, struggling for race goals at the moment, to fall into an obsessive way of behaving around my training. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to stay in a compelled state, not just with my training, but with everything in my life, which helps me to reduces the risk of becoming obsessive about my training. However, I am risking or potentially becoming obsessive about other things at the moment. So I'm quite anxious about getting ill. As I've explained before, I'm just below the marker for high risk because of my asthma, and I have been above the marker before. And so I'm quite anxious about getting ill. I know there are a lot of people at much higher risk than me, but it doesn't stop me being anxious about it. And that has led to some obsessive behaviours. And in fact, yesterday I had to take the dog for a walk at a time when I really didn't want to. But we live in a flat, didn't have a choice, had to take him for a walk at that time. It was quite busy in the park at that time, and it made me really, really anxious. My obsessive mindset towards this started to make me really, really anxious, and probably unnecessarily so when I reflect on it logically. Maybe there's an argument that a bit of obsession at the moment on this is a good thing, I don't know, but you have to be very careful, okay? So this is the basic commitment continuum. The way that the reactive and proactive one works is that the proactive one kicks in, so resistant on proactive kicks in lower down on the reactive one, if that makes sense. So they effectively offset from each other, but we'll explain that another day. So yeah, this is commitment continuum. So this is the second of the core behaviours. So it's absolutely essential that you are placed appropriately on the commitment continuum towards your goals. If you're not in the right place on the commitment continuum, really, the very minimum is committed. If I'm honest, I even find compliance a little bit irritating as a coach. Committed is where I like my athletes to be. Ideally compelled, but it's hard to be there all of the time. And as I said, it's not about being compelled to be a triathlete or being compelled. It's about balance, guys. I think now more than ever, we're understanding that actually some of the stuff that maybe we were compelled to achieve in the past suddenly hasn't become important anymore. Some of the people we are compelled to be like, suddenly we realise they're not actually as great as we thought they were. And some of the people we thought weren't great, now perhaps they are. So, you know, if you're not able to sit and compelled or at least committed, guys, I'd really question whether you've got your goal setting process right in the first place, because there's something obviously missing over here that's preventing you from being compelled and committed. And you should be revisiting this all of the time, because things change. And at the moment we're in a very volatile situation. Things are changing rapidly by the day. So it's really critical that you're able to constantly reflect and review this. And I've recently just set out, I'm setting goals, not daily, but certainly every 3 or 4 days, certainly at minimum weekly. I'm readjusting all of my goals because stuff is changing so much. So my goals change quite a lot depending on my needs. So I don't know if have I got, Lauren, how long have I got left?
4.
4 minutes. Okay, so I'll tell you what, guys, I've got 4 minutes left. If you don't want to listen to this bit, that's fine. But I'll just very quickly run you through what my goals are. I've written them down so that I make sure I remember them and I can keep referring back to them. So my goals for this week, week 15 of the year, would have been very different if I'd been in the final build towards Ironman Lanzarote. But these are my key goals at the moment. So first one is to sleep 8 hours a night. Now, it's not as simple as just saying I'm going to sleep 8 hours a night. There's a bit more to that in terms of how and why. I won't go into that now. But very, very simply, one of the things I have is I have an alarm process that triggers me to do certain tasks through the evening to make sure that I'm able to get into bed by 9 o'clock. I probably don't go to sleep at 9 o'clock. I normally watch a bit of TV, maybe read a book at 9. But if I'm in bed by 9, invariably I'm tired, so I normally fall asleep by 10. That means if I am up at 6, then I've got 8 hours sleep. If I get to sleep earlier, then fantastic. I do a stretch routine every single night. This helps relax me, keeps me mobile. I've got quite poor mobility, so it's quite critical for athletic goals and injury prevention, but it also helps me relax. And I have an alarm that goes off at 8:30, which is earlier than it used to prompt me to do that. That helps my whole evening process in terms of getting to bed on time. I don't work after 8 o'clock at the moment. I do sometimes in normal circumstances, but at the moment I'm trying to resist the temptation to work after 8. So I'm making sure I put my work away. And I know that's a privilege to be able to do that. A lot of people can't do that, I understand. But it's something that I do have some control over, so I'm trying to control not working beyond 8 o'clock in the evening. It's very tempting to spend time doing stuff, communicating with athletes, etc. I'm trying to take 1 full rest day a week. So I'm trying to make sure that I take a full rest day every single week, because that's 1 day where I don't train at all. Not even active recovery. So sometimes I wouldn't always take a full rest day every week. At the moment I am. I'm trying to make sure that my intensity in any set doesn't exceed my threshold. In fact, most of my intensity is way below my threshold. I use heart rate, power and RPE to determine that, because obviously on different days that might be different. I'm completing 4 to 5 minutes of Lego building a day, so I won't bore you with that too much, but it's my headspace routine, and it's my little escape, and I've posted a little bit about that on my social media anyway. But I'm setting myself a target 45 minutes a day. I'm now going to only walk the dog at quiet times, so for me that's kind of like 7 a.m. or before, 7 p.m. or after, because simply I just get too much anxiety walking in the rest of the time. Where we live in town, it's still way too busy. I'm going to complete 1 face-to-face one-to-one with a coached athlete every single day to make sure I stay engaged even more than we already are in the group virtual sessions we're doing with our athletes. I'm going to make sure this week I've got a goal of completing a charity kit order, so that's going to make me feel valued and give me some meaning around supporting the cause. And there's going to be, ideally, I'm going to have 2 days a week where I don't set an alarm to get up in the morning. Not always that easy to make that work logistically, but I try and find ways of scheduling my time so that I don't have to set an alarm 2 days a week. I normally still wake up quite early, but yeah, there we go. So there's my goals, guys. So hopefully the video is helpful. Yeah, let me know if you've got any questions. Have a good evening.